Section 12 of Alcatraz of the Starways by Henry Hasse and Albert DePina. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cinda J. M. Section 12. It had been too much, and too sudden for speech. Aladian was on her feet now. Even she was still gripped by the awe of the vast debacle. Mark watched Ernest Carsten stumble dazedly from the laboratory room, the appalling horror in his eyes betraying how intimately Earth's tragedy was his. He'd sent them out there to conquer, and they had remained to die. No one spoke. The crowding men who'd hoped for victory by Luhor even turned away before the magnitude of his power. The laboratory on Vulcan reflected in miniature the shocked silence of 4 worlds. They'd seen the mightiest armada of all time reduced to nothing in a space of minutes. Aladian was the first to act. With the same beam through which they'd watched the Holocaust, she contacted Earth. She tuned the council chamber, where gray faces looked to the coordinator in bewilderment and fear. But the coordinator, stricken to the depths of his narrow soul, was incapable of speech. In the oppressive silence, Aladian's winged figure materialized on the screen. "I greet you, Earthians, for the last time." Her molten voice had overtones of sadness. "You have seen your mighty fleet destroyed. Earth is defenseless. Luhor is on his way to Earth." How do you know?" The coordinator was moved to speech now, galvanized into life by a more immediate fear. "How? Because I am right now in telepathic contact with Luhor's mind." "We shall fight to the end." "Yes, I expected that of you." "You would condemn Earth to the same fate as your fleet? Awaken, Earthmen. No weapon that you have can destroy allotropic metal. You have seen Luhor's ships slice through your vessels as if they were paper. You're at his mercy now." Aladian allowed her words to sink while she widened the beam to include Mars and Venus as well as Earth, that her voice might carry to the entire Federation. "I am not speaking to you only now, but to 3 worlds whose fate depends on your decision. Agree to what I ask, and the danger from Luhor will be eliminated." "What do you ask?" The coordinator's voice came through as a mere whisper. 3 things only. Absolute liberation of Venus and Mars, which means equal representation at the Triplanetary Federation Council. Complete abolishment of the inhuman swamp of paradigm. And Venus to retain Vulcan with its allotropic metal as a measure of final safety. Agree to these points before the assembled peoples of the inhabited planets who are listening now, and Luhor shall never reach Earth. On Mars and Earth and Venus, her winged figures were reflected, while her voice cadenced in the ears of untold millions. "First," came the coordinator's voice, "how are you to prevent that fiend Luhor from pursuing his course? And second, what guarantees will we have that Venus will not build more of the allotropic cruisers to attack?" Although white and shaken, the coordinator could still snarl. "I will answer your second question first. As you well know, Venus has never in all her history resorted to war. Rather than kill," her voice became bitter, "we submitted to Earth's cruel domination. We saw the inhuman prison swamp spring into being for greed of the Jasmian pearls, death and persecution for the sake of power. I even personally suffered this." She held up her wings whose tendons had been cut. "Yet despite it all, history does not record murder by Venusians. That, Earthian, is your guarantee that we shall keep the peace. As to Luhor, I and I alone can stop him now. This is an offered chance you may take or leave. Remember, Luhor's fleet has 10 times the speed of Earth's fastest vessel and will be there sooner than you suppose. Think fast, Earthian." "Think also," Mark interposed in a voice of steel, "that here on Vulcan we have the allotropic metal, the means to work it, and the men to build our own cruisers if we so desire." "I accept." the coordinator said sullenly. Despite his fear and helpless rage, he could only envisage defeat and destruction should Luhor arrive at Earth. As for Aladian on Vulcan stopping the mad half-breed, he did not see how it was possible, but he had nothing further to lose by agreeing. With a gesture, he ordered the council to draw up a pact. 4 worlds watched the signatures grow one by one. Then, and not until then, did Aladian play her last card as she brought Venus into focus. Now! The single word was the last she uttered as she opened her arms. Her people were ready. They knew the sacrifice. Millions of miles away, an entire planet, as if it had been a single cosmic mind, concentrated on Luhor's fleet. A mighty stream of thought flowed out, vast but intangible, wave upon wave, directed by Aladian. The accumulated thought vibrations beat ceaselessly upon the minds of Luhor and his men. And on Venus, slowly, here and there, a winged figure fell and lay still, its mind sapped by the prodigious effort that knew no bounds. But the knowledge that Aladian, their princess who directed the combined flow, was under an infinitely greater mental strain than any of them individually, gave them added inspiration. Aladian had long since made all the others, even Mark, leave the laboratory. She maintained her vigil and efforts alone. On her magnum screen, which had shifted to cosmic space, the 6 invulnerable vessels continued their purposeful route toward Earth. Serenely they sped. But suddenly, with an odd twist, one of the spacers plunged headlong without warning into a sister ship. Both exploded into a cataract of flame. Another wavered, wheeled, then plunged toward outer space at vertiginous speed to disappear in a dwindling dot of silver. Of the remaining 3, one began to fire broadsides against the others, then rotated over and over out of control, while airlocks opened and figures leapt out to instantaneous death in the frigidity of space. It was a scene of silent horror. But while scores died in space, hundreds died on Venus at the magnitude of the effort. Still, the Venusian populace of millions concentrated in purposeful silence. A sense of madness unleashed stole into the laboratory room where Aladian stood alone, motionless and white-faced. She scarcely breathed. Her blue eyes were dilated. On the screen now only one cruiser remained. Not until then did Aladian move. Her hand reached out automatically to the dials. A second later, the interior of Luhor's cruiser lay revealed. The huge half-breed had held out to the last. He'd realized what was happening, knew that the thought power of an entire telepathic nation was reaching out across vast distances of space, the ghastly vibration of madness battering against the brains of his men. Now, even Luhor began to succumb, his brutal face contorted by spasms of demonic evil. His crew of men around him were already insane. A few sobbed monotonously on their knees, rocking from side to side. Others were already dead. One crewman was absorbed in daintily flaying another with a bright, keen penknife, while the rest were systematically destroying the ship and each other. In the midst of the scene, Luhor's face went suddenly gray and blank. He drew his electro-pistol and, like a man possessed, used it methodically about him until only he remained alive. It was then that Aladian used her last remaining strength, directing Luhor like an automaton to the controls where he remained frozen. The vessel heeled in space, changed course, heading away from Earth now, speeding directly sunward toward Vulcan base. Within the laboratory room, Aladian swayed, her face whiter than death. She grasped at the instrument panel for support, but her fingers closed on air as she crumpled to the floor. End of section 12.